And with that, the 2024 Formula One season is over. What do we think about the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the season finale in this one? We're going to talk about everything. We're going to save a little bit in talking about season stuff until our official season end video, probably going to come later this week or next week. But for now, let's talk about it. The final race weekend of 2024, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Welcome back, guys. The Abu Dhabi Grand Prix is over. The Formula One season is over, and we are here to talk about it. We're going to go over our quick hits. We're going to talk about our weekend winners and losers. We'll wrap things up with our predictions results, as well as our season predictions champion of our community. Stay tuned for that towards the end of the video. But we're going to jump into get this thing started with our quick hits. But before we do, if you haven't already, subscribe down below. I know the Formula One season is over, but preparations are already underway for 2025, and we would love to have you jump in and join our little community, as well as leave a like rating on the video if you enjoy it or if you enjoyed the 2024 season. And as always, leave a comment down below what you would give the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix out of 10. I'd love to see what you guys think. But let's go ahead, let's get this thing started with our weekend quick hits. Let's kick things off at the front. Lando Norris wins the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, qualifies on pole position, and then effectively, led basically the entire way, coming home and securing the Constructors' Championship for McLaren for the first time since 1998. Hard to believe that McLaren hasn't won a Constructors since then. It has been a long time coming for McLaren, and absolutely well deserved. It did get a little hairy at the beginning thanks to Max Verstappen taking out Oscar Piastri. Piastri unfortunately had to basically be fighting back the entire rest of the way, who I believe he did finish in the points just barely, but at the same time it did get a little hairy. If Lando did have a problem or a moment, Ferrari were right there with Carlos Sainz just behind, trying to pick up the pieces should they come home. But no, Ferrari finished a 2-3, a very good result for Ferrari considering Charles' unexpected 10th-place grid penalty going into FP1 where they had to change his battery replacement. I believe that was actually Charles' only grid penalty for for component changes all year. So his, the reliability of the Ferrari went actually very, very well for him. So unfortunate timing to say the least when he was fighting for the constructors, but based on what we saw in qualifying anyway, he wasn't going to be challenging at the front, being knocked out in Q2 thanks to track limits. So he started at the back and fought all the way up the field, all the way back up onto the podium. So a ridiculous drive from Charles Leclerc. Carlos did whatever he could to try and pressure Lando into mistake, but unfortunately the McLaren just had the pace this weekend, and that was that. I mentioned one already, but we have to talk about the drives from Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton in this one. Both of them obviously starting at the back for various reasons. Charles with his aforementioned 10th place grid penalty, and Lewis Hamilton thanks to a bollard that had been knocked onto the track by Kevin Magnussen, was knocked out in Q1, started the race I believe in 18th or 17th or something like that, and ultimately came home to finish in P4 just off the podium. So another mega drive for Lewis Hamilton's final race in the Mercedes team. I believe they said this was his 246th race with Mercedes, which is the longest single driver pairing, I believe, or at least the most successful single team driver pairing in this one. So Lewis has completed his time with Mercedes and will be joining Ferrari for 2025. Gonna be very exciting, replacing Carlos Sainz, obviously. So we saw another mega drive from Lewis. George Russell finishes P5 in this one, so very solid result for the Mercedes. Definitely one to remember and try and build some momentum going into next year. Obviously, we have Kimi Antonelli jumping in the car there, so I'll be interested to see if he can pick up where Lewis is going to leave off. But at the same time, what an unbelievable drive from Lewis, definitely finishing off his time in Mercedes in style. And while I'm sure he would have loved to be competing for the win, getting a true masterclass drive from Lewis going from the back all the way up to the front in this one was a lot of fun to watch, and he absolutely deserved everything about it. Charles, obviously, once again, another one of the drivers, obviously fought all the way up to the podium, like we mentioned. Had one of the most insane lap ones I think we've seen in a very long time, going into after the back straight. It seems like all the other drivers were kind of defending or attacking down the inside, and Charles just looked at the sea parting to the round to the outside, and he said, "Thank you very much," and then took a nice, beautiful move around the outside and got it to stick. And I believe that he was up to P12 or so, basically at the end of lap 1, and then obviously just went off from there, the Ferrari had a lot of good pace, obviously, and we found himself on the podium. So absolutely fantastic drives from the pair of them. It's going to be a very fun 2025 to watch if Lewis can get up to speed in the Ferrari quickly, because I think that is a driver pairing that is going to be very, very fun to watch. And now, as a Haas fan, we have to talk about the unfortunate downside that Alpine officially clinched P6 in the Constructors this weekend. Pierre finishing just ahead of Nico Hülkenberg in P7, with Nico finishing P8 this week. And it was a lot of fun to watch, if we're going to be honest. While I am disappointed that Haas didn't end up taking P6, ultimately, it is what it is. It's one of the better seasons from Haas in a few years. I believe this is their highest finish since I think it was their inaugural season or the next season or something like that. So a very well-deserved result for Haas, who going into the season, obviously a lot of people did not seem to have high hopes for, especially even the members of the team itself. So to finish P7 in the Constructors just shows the testament to how consistent they've been all season and the strides they've taken all season. I mean, we even saw this weekend that the Haas was looking very, very strong all weekend in practice and even in qualifying, where before Nico Hülkenberg's qualifying 3-place grid penalty put it P4 on the grid. So this gives me a lot of hope for next season. Obviously, we're gonna have 2 new drivers in the car with Esteban Ocon and Ollie Behrman, but at the same time, we've seen Ollie perform pretty decently and have a couple of Haas races under his belt this year, and so hopefully he'll be able to get up to speed. And then obviously Esteban, who had been struggling in the Alpine leading down towards the finish of this season, hopefully he'll be able to jump into the car in the postseason test and get up to speed as best as possible so we can hit 2025 and running. I'm excited to see the Toyota partnership coming good, to see what Toyota can bring to Haas and hopefully help them continue to move forward like they have been. It's going to be fun next year, and hopefully even in 2026, if we're allowed to look that far ahead, and see if we can build a good car and come out swinging. All right, I'm going to touch on this a little bit later, but I do want to mention just how bad I feel for all of the drivers who aren't going to have drives after this race. We saw a lot of retirements from drivers who are going to be leaving the sport after this weekend, and it just really feels for them, because you really want them to be able to go out and give their all. Like some people we get to see who are going to be moving teams. These are guys who aren't going to be even in the sport next year, and it really felt bad to see people like Colapinto and Bottas retiring from this race. Sometimes not even of their own fault. Bottas is another story, but it is what it is. And so I do feel for them, as obviously it's their final race and they wanted to be able to go out and show what they really have. And unfortunately, due to one situation or another, it was taken from them, and I do feel bad. And then at that point, there it is. The Formula One season is over. 24 race weekends, and it feels like it went by in a flash. We are officially under 100 days until 2025 season begins, so we are marking on the calendar as we count down. But without further ado, let's move on to our weekend winners and losers. Let's kick this section off with our weekend winners, and I am going to go with a 3-part combo for winners. The first 2 is going to be Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, with a special honorable mention to McLaren for winning their Constructors' Championship. Very well deserved for them. They definitely had the best car for a lot of this season, and they definitely deserve to come home with the championship. But for this weekend in particular, I'm going to give it to Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, and Ferrari for the weekend here in Abu Dhabi, just because we saw an absolute fantastic drive from both of these guys, and lo and behold, going into next season, they're going to be in the same car. I think this is one of the driver pairings that I'm most excited to see in general, just because we've seen things that Charles has been able to do. We've seen the race pace and race trim situation, and when Lewis feels like he has the car underneath him, to see what he still has to offer to the sport. And going into next year, it could be a lot of fun if they're able to put it together from the jump. I'm really excited to see what those two do in the Ferrari next year, and following what the drives and the performances that we just saw out of both of them today, going from the back literally almost to the front this weekend. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Can't wait to see what they do next year. Unfortunately, we do need to name a weekend loser, and I'm going with a bit of a collective. I mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to go with the drivers who unfortunately had to retire from this race or had something happen that ultimately kept them from either finishing or really, ending the season off on the right foot. Like Colapinto, Bottas, should be Perez, Magnussen, who unfortunately was taken out by Valtteri Bottas and finished down the order when he had been running very well all weekend long. And you really feel for them, because it's always emotional when the season is over, and when you're leaving the sport, it is extra emotional. And to have it end on a whimper, especially like Sergio Perez being taken out in lap 1, Colapinto had the car issue and had to retire. Valtteri Bottas had the one mistake locking up going into the chicane on the back straight. unfortunately colliding with Kevin Magnussen, who had been running well, and just had to, unfortunately, at that point, his race was basically over, although he didn't retire. Haas did give him a nice send-off, allowing him to go onto the softs and set some fastest laps and just have one last blast around the Abu Dhabi circuit. So I'm sure and hope that he had a good time at least doing that. So it's unfortunate, really. My heart goes out for them because it can only be an emotional thing to go into your final race weekend in the sport, maybe ever. People like Kevin Magnussen and a lot of drivers with a lot of question marks around them, like Sergio Perez, Colapinto, Bottas, who has said that he's going to try and stick around if he can, but who really knows with this sport? I mean, things can change in an instant. So my heart goes out to them. And while they are, I think, my weekend losers, I think it's just because I feel for them so much. All right, for the final time here in 2024, predictions, results. We're going to go over the predictions that I made before the weekend began, see how we did, and we'll take a look at now our final and official final standings for our Community Predictions Championship. Let's kick things off with my biggest positive surprise. I went with Lewis Hamilton. And I could not believe that he was going to end his time in Mercedes without giving us one more absolute banger. And boy, oh boy, were we right. We saw him. It was a little touch and go there for a minute after qualifying, but we saw an absolutely mega drive from Lewis, basically charging through the field, chasing down his own teammate there at the end and finishing P4 on the road. Absolutely fantastic stuff from Lewis. Absolutely a point for me. Moving on to my pick for biggest disappointment, I went with Oscar Piastri in this one, and I give myself the point here too. Taken out by Max Verstappen in lap 1, and then eventually also getting himself a 10-second penalty for his collision with Franco Colapinto. And so just a bit of a rough one from Piastri. Obviously half of it is not necessarily his fault, but he just had to be chasing down through the mid-pack the whole way. He did finish in the points, but considering where, it would have probably felt a lot more safe for McLaren if he had managed to hold on to even P2 at the beginning and kind of be able to run there and defend off the Ferraris. I'm sure they would have liked it a little bit more. So unfortunately, a bit of a whimper for Piastri as he finished his season. Moving on to my qualifying predictions. I had a Lando Norris pole position. I had Max Verstappen in P2 and Charles Leclerc in P3. Obviously got the Lando Norris pole position correctly. Max only ended up qualifying P5, and then Charles, obviously with his lap time deletion in Q2, was knocked out in Q2. So only a single point there for qualifying for me. I think I was on for something eventually, but the times and the situation just didn't call for it. So unfortunately, only a point for me there. As we move on now to my race podium, I actually had a Max Verstappen win, a Lando Norris P2, and a Lewis Hamilton P3. Max just, for whatever reason, just didn't seem to have the pace in this one. Obviously winning his penalty for taking out Piastri in this one and had to kind of chase back through the upper midfield and then ultimately finishing well inside the points, but nowhere near a win. So unfortunately, no point for me there. I predicted Lando Norris P2, so half point for me there for predicting him on the podium, just in the wrong position. And then Lewis Hamilton, if he had not been knocked out in Q1, I refuse to believe that he would not have finished on the podium, but alas, P4 is not on the steps of the podium, so no points for me there, and 0.5 points for our race podium. So not the greatest weekend, not the weekend I needed to finish ahead in the championship. A little bit of spoiler there. And then my one crazy prediction, our last one crazy prediction of the year, is I predicted that Haas would finish ahead of three cars from the top 4 teams. So one or more cars from McLaren, Red Bull, Mercedes, or Ferrari. We actually got pretty close. We did finish ahead of a Red Bull and a McLaren, so all we needed was one of the other 4 cars to have an issue, but unfortunately not. Both Ferraris on the podium and Mercedes in 4 and 5, with Nico Hülkenberg only finishing in P8. So I was close, but at the same time, no point for me there. And so if we take a look at our final standings this year, we take a look, and our year-long community winner is British TTG, 82.5 points over the course of the season. Absolutely fantastic job from him. He came from behind there towards the middle of the season to end up taking a 2-point win over the field. I came in second in this one, 80.5 points, just 2 points off the win. I needed a big weekend, and I just wasn't able to deliver. Senna 40 comes home in P3 to round out the podium, 76.5 points. The 3 of us have been on this basically all year. We had some people jump in mid-season, so we still wanted to include them in our championship, but obviously there's a little bit of an asterisk as some of them hopped in mid-season, and obviously their points reflect it. We had F1 Inferno with 56.5 points when it was all said and done, Andrew with 51.5 points, and we actually had a community member jump in, win the last 2 races, and finish with 5 points. So actually not too shabby, if I do say so myself. So this has been a lot of fun. I've loved doing this community predictions championship. It's been a lot of fun, and if you're interested, and we're definitely going to be doing it again for 2025, so jump in, get into the Discord link down below, have some fun with us, and we'll see what comes in 2025. I'm coming for that title, and we'll see if British can defend, and Sinnel makes the one to makes the charge himself. So it was a lot of fun. We're going to try and figure out some kind of prize. I don't know. We never really discussed it, and we'll figure it out after the fact. But guys, it's been an unbelievable year. What is next for Formula One? The answer is, some tire tests and young driver tests this week. But after that, there is absolutely nothing. We are officially wrapped on the 2024 season. My end of year video is going to be coming here, like I said, in the next week or so. We're going to try and have some fun. Take a look at our season-long predictions and see how we did there. Maybe we'll add those totals and see, depending on how well I did, but we'll see. I make the rules that they don't, so they'd have to get on board or out of the way, as they say. At the end of the day, the 2025 season is just around the corner. Preseason testing in February and the first race weekend in mid-March in Melbourne, Australia, for the return of Australia as the first race weekend of the calendar year. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoy the break. I hope you enjoyed the 2024 season and jumping on board and joining our little community as we do this. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a pleasure to talk to you guys about it, both on stream and in these videos itself. As always, guys, I appreciate everyone who came and joined the community. I appreciate everyone who watches these videos till this point in the video. And I can't wait for 2025 to come. We have some more fun things planned, and we're going to try and flesh them out as we get there. But for now, that is going to be my official sign-off for the 2024 season. And as always, guys, I'll see you in the next one.